Lawmakers have attacked the government for allowing two ferry companies to raise fares on routes to outlying islands despite receiving a $190 million subsidy.
They accused officials of spoiling the operators and making them too reliant on government help. Yeung reports.
Transport panel lawmakers today denounced the authorities for allowing two ferry operators to raise fares on 6 outlying island routes when their licenses were renewed in February. They reflected the outrage of islanders when the fare rises were announced. Ferry fares at the moment are ridiculous, said the Civic Party's Kwok Ka-ki. He noted that it would cost almost $100 for a family of 3 to travel one way to the islands. Kwok demanded to know why New World First Ferry and Hong Kong and Kowloon Ferry were subsidized to the tune of $190 million when services and facilities did not seem to have improved. The government said higher operating expenses, including fuel and wages, as well as inflation, were considered when granting the subsidy. But legislators warned operators might become too reliant on government funding and reminded officials that they are private companies.
The
government can't pamper these operators, warned the New People's Party's Michael Tian. He suggested that the government should take over from the operators instead. Lawmakers pressed the government for a guarantee that the operators will not seek another fare hike, but officials did not oblige. Ferries are the only means of transport to the outlying islands, leaving residents there with no choice but to cough up the extra money whenever fares go up. The fare increase on the Mui Wo to Central route took effect on the 1st of April, while hikes on the other 5 will come into force on the 1st of July. Wina Wong, ATV News.
The Environment Minister has played down concerns about the stability of power supplies from the mainland.
The government is trying to convince the public about the benefits of increasing supplies from across the border. Arthur Urquiola reports.
LegCo's Economic Development Panel discussed concerns this morning about a government proposal to tackle the worsening air pollution by importing a third of the supply from the mainland grid. This is one of 2 options undergoing public consultation. The other is to triple the share of locally produced natural gas in the fuel mix to about 60%. Lawmakers expressed fears about the stability of imported supplies. Commercial sector lawmaker Jeffrey Lam, who has factories on the mainland, said the power supply there is far from satisfactory. During the summer months when power consumption is at its peak, supplies are sometimes suspended without notice, Lam pointed out. Christopher Chung of the Business and Professionals Alliance asked if there would be a mechanism to keep tariff hikes in check. Government officials explained that the mainland supplies power to big cities, as well as the countryside, and caters to all types of demands. As an example, they cited the case of Macau, which imports more than 90% of its power from the mainland grid, and has a reliable supply and a mechanism to stabilize prices. Environment Secretary Wong Kam Singh pointed out if Hong Kong were to pursue local power generation, there would be less room to open up the electricity market. He said if Hong Kong did consider purchasing power from the mainland, measures would be in place to ensure that quality and reliability meet current standards. But the environment chief stressed the government is open to both options being considered, and in future, will consult the public on opening up the market. Environment Undersecretary Christine Low said in this case, a third competitor was most likely to come from the mainland. She explained that it's unlikely another company would build plants here from scratch, while there are already companies across the border investing in power generation. Arthur Urquiola, ATV News.
Overseas again, the man said to be Ukraine's new president has promised to end conflicts that has divided his country and open talks with Russia.
Preliminary results show that tycoon Petro Poroshenko won 56% of the vote, ruling out a runoff.
It was a sweet victory for Petro Poroshenko, the billionaire known as the Chocolate King.
His main rival, former Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko, conceded defeat after exit polls put her far behind in second place. That set the stage for the 48-year-old Poroshenko to take over the reins of a country torn between East and West. He pledged to reach out to pro-Russian activists who have in recent weeks seized government buildings in eastern Ukraine, triggering clashes which resulted in several casualties. Poroshenko promised an amnesty for those who took up arms in the east, which he'll visit as soon as he's head of state.
The only condition for using the amnesty law, two conditions. It's just no blood and disarmament. For those who are killing the people, they're terrorists. And no country in the world has any negotiation with the terrorists.
But there's little sympathy in eastern Ukraine for Poroshenko, who's seen as a flag bearer in Kiev for those wanting to push Ukraine into the Western camp. We don't have anything to do with the election of a president of another country, declared Vasily Nikitin, the self-declared Prime Minister of Luhansk. Luhansk and the neighbouring Donetsk region virtually ignored the Ukrainian presidential election, with ballot boxes there broken and stuffed with rubbish. The heavily Russian-speaking eastern regions held referendums earlier this month, distancing themselves from Kiev. In an attempt to assure eastern Ukraine, Poroshenko said he intends to talk to Moscow as soon as possible. Russian President Vladimir Putin has promised to recognise the result of the presidential election and has taken steps to ease tensions. He has already urged the eastern regions not to go ahead with their own referendums, but Poroshenko's demand that Crimea be returned to Ukraine may fall on deaf ears. Moscow incorporated Crimea into its territory in March after Crimeans voted overwhelmingly to join Russia. The ballot came after violent protests in Kiev forced Moscow ally President Viktor Yanukovych to flee, paving the way for pro-Western politicians to gain control.
Time now for sports with Raymond Yeung.
And another 1-2 for rampant Mercedes.
Well, that's right. This time they did it in Monaco. Germany's